There, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to our thing of reading Kojeve's uh, A Notion of Authority. Well, this is today we're finishing pages 48 to 58, which is the remaining part of Group A. We're looking at both Section 2, Part 2, which deals with metaphysical analysis, and because the third part is so small, we're going to continue it right into it. So let's go right into it. Okay, this is the metaphysical analysis. Now let us move to the metaphysical analysis of the phenomena of authority. This analysis can only be sketched out here. So very again, this is a very no, again, this is like a pronumaga, a beginning thing, something sketchy, just general sketch, not a in-depth analysis. Right? There is no doubt that authority is an essentially human non-natural phenomena. So therefore, so this is the human as in man-made, right? Non-natural phenomena, which means, without our being able to demonstrate this here, it is a social and historical. So therefore, in other words, he's not saying that it's something by natural. It is not natural in that it is not something that occurs within nature on its own. Rather, it is something human-made, something human, that is, man creates it. But this leads to the idea of social and historical. Okay, social and historical in a sense. But social, the question is society, man's social thing, a product of man's nature? Then to what degree is it natural? So therefore, in many ways, he's accepting a radical distinction. Anything made by man is not natural. Okay, so it's man-made, and hence history is man-made. So his history and society are constructs, right? Authority presupposes a society or a state in the broadest sense. See, state equals society can be political, religious, and in a supposed relation to the beyond, etc. The religious state is called church. Here we are talking about political states only, right? This is in that sense nine, right? This broad sense, and that something other than an animal herd whose reaction is not possible, where reaction is not possible. So an animal herd has no possible sense of conscious choice of reaction. Okay. In addition, society presupposes and implies history. Presupposes and therefore implies it is not just a biological and natural evolution. So history implies therefore human choices, and therefore this. I mean, I'm going to say here, evolution involves choices of things. So how is not? It's not evolution is like just simply a process of things. It's history and not just a biological and natural evolution, right? So therefore, it's his radical idea of existential. This idea, the Aristotelian and Darwin, Aristotelian and Darwinian in me says, no. So Mr. Kojeve, you're just simply talking through your hat. Uh, um, Animals make choices. Organisms, every in the act of surviving, the mutations and things like this are kinds of choices in the same sense of this. Yes, therefore, there is a reaction. Everything has a reaction to things. And your idea that only a willing creature that has total freedom and nothing more than this is kind of, I think, love and hate are not, or love and fear are not going to be an engine by which choices are made, is, I think, a very simplistic understanding in this sense. So let's continue what he says here, right? This idea of that it's therefore that society presupposes a history, right? And that history is something therefore man-made, an artificial construction, non-natural in the sense, right? And therefore, as opposed to biological and natural evolution. So therefore, human history is not the same as, in other words, in other words, authority can manifest itself, become phenomena, only in a world with a temporal structure. So Authority can only manifest itself in a world with a temporal time, right? Temporal. The metaphysical foundation of authority is therefore a modification of the eternity time of the eternity time, to be understood as human or historic time, with with the rhythm, future comma past comma present, as opposed to natural time, with the predominance of the present in the physical sphere, or the past in the biological sphere. So, okay, let's understand this. Metaphysical is understood in terms of the modification of a time eternity, understood in the human or historic time, with future, past, present, as opposed to the natural time with the predominance in the present in the physical space, or past in the biological space. So, okay, evolution, the past thing of the present, right? And that physical space is there. Um, I would also say that physics the same way. Subatomic structures create structures. It's not just present in that sense. But since there is the primacy of the future, since there is the primacy of the future, there is also, as we shall see, the primacy of the authority of the leader. So the future choice, and the primacy of the future, what is to be in the future. The leader is the one who decides what is that, right? The authority of the leader. Authority par excellence, that of the political, religious, and so on, revolutionary leader with a universal project. Oh, Stalin, Lenin, right? Oh, what about Hitler? Had a universal project, humanity being wiped out and reframed. So, sorry, we see Kojeve's little true colors. I'm Stalinist, man. Okay, there is no authority in the eternal as such. So the eternal itself has no authority. The Father, okay, no, Father generates, right? So no, if we, as we shall see, a type of authority is metaphysically founded in eternity. It is only in relation with time that the eternity manifests itself in the guise of authority. So time itself, right? There is no doubt that time, therefore, has the value of an authority. And curiosity enough, and this may also seem at first sight paradoxical, it has this in all its three modes. So the past, future, present. Right. First, first of all, the past. A past is always venerable. Tampering with it is sacrilegious. To neglect it is inhuman. The authority of an institution has always been justified, explained by its antiquity, especially in pagan tradition, right? Tradition. Similarly, the seniority of a family, of a state, has always been not a little. Has always been not only a title of glory, but also a very real foundation of authority, the past tradition. Right? But there is, on the other hand, an equally indisputable authority, that of the future. And the man of the future has the authority from the fact that having everything before him. It is from the future they embody that the young derive their authority, for which at times can be considerable. We recognize voluntarily the authority of the man of tomorrow. We can also claim one's own self millennia to come, see Hitler, right? As well as the past millennia, see Mussolini. So therefore the authority from past Mussolini, right? And the future, in other words, for the millennia to come and the past millennia, right? Mussolini. Finally, the present has an authority as present. We want to be up to date. 10. This is English in the original text, right? We do not want to be behind the times. The enormous and tyrannical authority of fashion is an authority of the present, of the actual. The authority of the man of the moment pertains to the fact that he is par excellence. He is, par excellence, who represents actuality, the present, the real presence of something in the world. Hegel's Gegenwart, right? Okay, this is look at we'll do a little text chart. This is German. Hi there, German. It's a trick language. No German. Present, right? This is it. So you can see, as opposed to the poetic unreality of the past and the utopian unreality of the future. So Gegenwart, the present, which is whereas the past is unreal and it's ultimate real, right? This is Hegel's idea. On the other hand, all these temporal authorities are set up against the authority of eternity. So therefore, eternity is always, right? The past, future, and present are moments within eternity, right? We often claim an adherence to eternal principles, and their authority pertains to the fact that they are outside the three modes of time. It is from eternity that the representatives of God on earth derive their authority. But it is obvious that in the eternity, that if the eternal has authority, it is only by opposition to the temporal. That is to say, in relation to the latter. So therefore, it's in other words, it has authority in relation to the present or the moment, this current thing, the temporal, right? It is the authority in relation to the temporal, right? Eternity, we say without demonstrating it, is nothing but the negation of time. That is to say, it depends on it. So eternity is negation of time, and therefore it depends on time, right? And the authority of the eternal is confirmed as such by relating itself negatively to the authorities of the either the present, past, or future. So it's in other words it's negated negatively to present, past, and future. It's the always. There is thus an authority of eternity, as there is an authority of time. In its three modes, the greatest question lies in knowing whether in this is the case of a sui generis authority, or 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 a direct manifestation of the metaphysical foundations of the four pure types of authority that we have already studied. One indication suggests this second hypothesis. We have distinguished four pure types of authority, and the authorities we are now considering is necessarily divided into four types: the authority of the eternal, the authority of the temporal, and the latter is made of the authority of the present, the past, and the future. So that temporal, present, past, future, for four subtypes. It is therefore natural to suppose that that we have two contemporary aspects of one and the same authority, having the same quadruple structure. Certainly, this is just one piece of evidence, but it also confirmed by another. If we consider our four pure types, we see that they can be naturally organized into two groups: the authority of the judge as against the authority of the father, the authority of the master, the father, majority of against the authority, and the leader, um, the leader and the master against the authority of the judge as against the authority, of the father, the leader, and the master, which form a block. And we suggest to us the idea of seeing authority of the judge as closer to the eternal as against the three temporal authorities, that together which form a block as temporal. So the thing is the block. The judge is against the father, the leader, and the master, and therefore the father, leader, and master kind of form a block. So therefore the eternal is connected with the judge. Okay, and the other past, present, future like this. Analysis confirms this. On the one hand, I've already seen the authority of the judge does not lend itself, so to speak, to any form of transmission, whereas the other three are transmitted in one way or another, particularly via hereditary, right? While we often see that the son inherits the authority of the father, the master or the leader simply because they are sons of those who used to possess those authorities. It has never been observed that someone inherits by simple filtration of authority of judge as judge. We can therefore say that the authority of the judge is resistance to any form of any form of succession. That is to say, any form of temporalization. So succession is thus temporization, right? Temporalization, transition in time. Since it is in some sense outside of time, it is deemed to exist always. So justice always exists, right? And if it cannot do so, it disappears completely to come into being spontaneously once again. Instead of passing without discontinuity over to something posterior. So it doesn't just passes to something posterior before it. No, posterior is like the bottom, so beneath it, or after it. After posterior comes after it. The thing that comes after posterior. The thing that come after it. Okay. The three other authorities, in contrast, seem to persist in time, and their transition does nothing other than manifest their temporal essence. On the other hand, the authority of the judge, in a way, sets itself against the three others, which still form a block in their opposition. In fact, the judge can, in principle, judge the father, the master, the leader, but the authority of but the nature of the authority of the judge as such that it should in theory be subtracted from action arising from the authority of the three types. So the judge as but the nature of the authority of the judge is such that it should in theory be subtracted from the action arising from the authority of the other three types. Finally, just as eternity has an authoritarian character only in and through its relation with time, the judge has no true authority except insofar as he sets himself, if needs arise, against the other three authorities. If the fathers, if the leaders, and the masters were by definition or in essence just, there would be no distinct authority of the judge. And if the judge were not to be able to set his justice against the wills of the father, the leader, and the master, he would have no authority. Everything leads us to suppose that the authority of the judge is nothing other than a variant of the authority of the eternal. That is to say, the authoritarian manifestation of eternity in relation with time. And a direct analysis, which can only be outlined here, confirms this supposition. So the idea of the eternal has no authority, strictly speaking, except in relation to human actions, insofar as it cancels some of them, namely those that have the characters of reactions against the active interventions of the element of eternity. It is therefore not eternity as such, but the actions endowed with an eternal character that have authority. So not eternity as it, but the actions that have eternal character. But an action is eternal either when it's outside of time, it is outside time. That is to say, independent of the conditions created by the past, the present, or the future, or when it is at all times, that is to say, in the present, past, and future. But this is precisely what characterizes the just action. It is outside time because this action, the just judgment, for example, is dependent neither on the interest of the day nor the preconceived options dictated by the past, nor finally on the desires anchored in the future. And it is at all times, since being just, it remains so eternally, and can indefinitely, qua judgment, turn its attention to the present, such to the present as much as to the past or the future. Just as eternity, being the negation of the particular modes of time, can be considered as a totality, or the integration of the latter, so the authority of judge, justice, right, can be interpreted as the integration of the three others, the latter being unable to form a harmonious unity, not even one that is stable or eternal, except on the condition of subordinating themselves in block to the authority of the judge or that of justice. We can therefore say that if eternity only manifests itself in the guise of authority, insofar as it is realized in the world qua justice, the authority of the judge, for its part, can find its metaphysical foundation only uh, in the presentation of eternity in time. This present penetration having for effect the duration of as well as the unity of the latter. Eternity in relation with time is therefore indeed the metaphysical basis of the authority of the judge. So this idea, the judge is justice. Justice is always eternal, in the sense of the authority of eternality is found manifested in the authority of the judge. As for the other three pure types of authority, they have their metaphysical basis in human time. In fact, the temporal characters of these authorities is beyond doubt, and only remains to know how they are divided among the three modes of time. Right? We have seen that the authority of the father lends itself best to hereditary transmission, while those of the leader and the master favors transmission by nomination and by election, or even random allocation. But it is obvious that hereditary operates under the domain in other words, operates under the domain of the idea of the past. Nomination seems, by contrast, to appeal to the future behavior of the nominated. As for election, i.e., lots, it is simply fact. It is the simple fact of election, i.e., drawing of lots, that matters. That is to say, an act essentially belonging to the present. And this leads us to suppose that if the authority of the father is manifestly of the past, the leader and the master respectively manifest the authority of the future and the past. Now, this is number 11. This should likely read present, not past, possible error. But no, I can understand that. The manifest of the father. The father is that the future, and I think that's the present. He's right, the present. I think that the authorities, in other words, of the past and of the future and the present. So that's a textual error. So I think they're right about this. The present and the present, future and the present. He says past there, but no, the past has already been passed. So that's a text error. Okay, I can see that. Direct analysis, only outlined here, confirms this supposition. Let us first take the past. It is not. It is not the past as such that has authority. Nature is more ancient than man. The ages of stone can be highly venerable. There is nevertheless no authority in these cases. The past which exerts an authority over me is a historic past. It is my past, or is to say the past that is the cause of my present and the basis of my future. It is the past that is held to determine the present with the future in mind. In other words, the past does not acquire an authority except insofar presents itself in the guise of a tradition. We can therefore say that time, in the mode of the past, manifests itself in the guise of the authority of the Father, and that of the latter has its metaphysical foundation in the presence, in the presence of the past. In other words, it has its metaphysical foundation in the presence of the past, in the present. That is to say, in in every reality that is part of the temporal world. So in other words, its foundation is in the presence of the past in the present, in every reality of that part of the temporal world. Let us move on to the future. Here again, the future, simple, pure and simple, has no authority. Everything has a future ahead of it, and this is in no way increases its prestige. The future expert, the future exerts an authority only insofar it is my future, the historic future, which determines the present, or is assumed to determine it, while maintaining its link with the past. In other words, the future exerts an authority only insofar as it manifests manifests itself in the guise of a project, conceived in the presence of the future in mind, and based on knowledge about the past. Okay, this is again future. Now we're talking about the future. The future has no. It's my future. It has no basis in something that it's knowledge about. In other words, it's conceived of the present and with the future in mind and based on knowledge about the past. Right. In other words, it's about them then talking about what is happening now. Right. We can therefore lay that the future manifests itself in authoritarian form, qua the authority of the leader, which has as its metaphysical basis the virtual presence of the future in all that is a human, that is to say, historic present, that is to say, a temporal, to be understood historic reality. So that's what it is. In other words, it's about the future. We make it. It is not. It is the authority has authority, but what should be done in there, right? This is so again. It manifests physical basis on the virtual presence of the future, and all that is a human present. That is to say, a temporal reality, right? Finally, let us look at the present. Given that all that exists in the temporal world is present, the present as such cannot have any authority. The person subject to authority can claim adherence to the present pure and simple in the same way as the one who exerts this authority. It is the historic present, the historic moment that has the unquestionable authority, and not the present, the t equals zero time of physics, the present time equals zero, the now, right? It uh, 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 it is the entity having a real presence in the mass of things that are simply present, that is to say, existent, that has authority. The real presence of the spirit is matter, that of which of that which does not exist in the strong sense of the term, and all that represents effective existence. So repeat that. This is a very complicated sentence. It is the eternity entity having a real presence in the mass of things that are simply present, that is to say, existent, that has authority. The real presence of the spirit in matter, the real presence of the spirit in matter, of that which does not exist in a strong sense of the term, in all that represents effective existence. Okay, effective. So therefore, this is the things that does not exist in the strong sense, in all that represents effective existence. Okay, that's okay. Of that which does not exist in the strong sense of the term, in all that represents effective existence. But the non-existence in the temporal world is either that which no longer exists, right, or that which does not exist yet. So it doesn't. In other words, in the temporal world, right, what doesn't exist is either ceased to exist, or that it has doesn't exist yet, right. It is the past or the future. We notice, therefore, a real presence of the past and the future in the present, which has authority. It is present that arises from the past and is expecting the future. But such a such a human or historic present is nothing other than action in the strongest sense of the term. The action that realizes in the present the memories of the past as well as the project of the future. Action, however, sets itself against being. So action sets itself against being. And this opposition, so action and being are kind of opposed to each other. And this opposition is realized and manifests itself in and by, if you prefer, the transformation of being through action, which is basically an active destruction of being. So, the sense this is okay. This is Heidegger. This is Heidegger. This is Heidegger. Now we see this. This is Kojeve on Heidegger and Hegel, right? There's the being, right? Being is manifest. This being in action is manifest, and action is action, an active destruction of being. But the risk that generates the authority of the master is precisely this very action in the strict sense of the word, which sets itself against its being, its life, places this in peril, and can, if necessary, annihilate it completely. And all activity of the master founded on this risk is a realization and manifestation of the past and the future in the present, and action in the proper sense of the term. So he's tying mastery with this question of action as opposition to being, right? Of which is the present. Action, however, is indeed a manifestation of time in the present world. We can therefore say that it is the present of the historic world that is the metaphysical basis of the authority of the master, and that the present does not manifest itself in in its authoritarian form insofar as it realizes itself qua action, distinctly, strictly speaking, action that would not stop even when faced with the risk of total destruction of the being that supports it. Sorry. This idea that it's an action that will not stop even though it risks the destruction of the being that supports it. The authority of the needs of the day that sets itself against that of the dream of the future and the preservation of the past is ultimately the authority of the necessities of war, or generally speaking, the vital risks which are entailed in the presentation of the past of a nation into its future through its present. So this is a bracketed thing. The authority of the needs of the day that sets itself against that of the dream of the needs of the day, against the dreams of the future, and the preservation of the past are ultimately the authority of the necessities of war, or generally speaking, the vital risks which are entailed in the presentation of the past of the nation into its future through its present. The authority of the master is therefore not only that of the warrior. Generally speaking, it is the authority of the person who, in all spheres, is ready to run the risk, and who knows how to act and is capable of taking a direction, a project, who gets down to business, and so on. In short, a person who is not, yet nevertheless always reasonable and careful. So a person who is not, nevertheless, always reasonable and careful. A person who's not always reasonable and careful. So you're taking a risk, right? Time, in relation with eternity, is realized in the temporal world through the causal structure of the latter. So it's the causal past, present, future, right? That's the temporal structure. Without going into details, let us just point out that let us point out that if now, so without going, I thought I did it already, but I didn't do it, and now I'm realizing I made it correct. Without going into the details, let us just point out that if, right, eternity is realized by the formal cause, reality, time realizes the past qua material cause, and the future via final cause, and the present qua efficient cause. See Aristotle. This is the four. He ties Aristotle's four causes, right? The eternity formal, past material, future final, and the present the efficient cause. But on the level of human existence, that is to say, in the temporal historic world, the formal cause manifests itself by contemplation. That is to say, but in general, by the passive, theoretical, disinterested, and quietist behavior. The three other causes, by contrast, manifest themselves on this level through the modes of practical or active of practical or active, voluntary or interested behavior. The efficient cause manifests itself through action in the proper sense of the word, the action carried out in the present. The final cause does so through the project, that is to say, projected into the future. And the material cause through existential memory of, or the tradition carried out, uh, 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 car- carried out, so to speak, by inertia, similar to the passage of being from the cause to its effect, right? In it is easy to see that the authoritarian aspect of these manifestations are nothing other than the phenomena of authority on the one hand, those of the father, the master, and the leader, which are all acting in one way or another, and on the other hand, that of the judge, who does not act but contents himself with contemplating or judging the acts of others. Thus, the causal structure of the historic world, which derives from the temporal structures, also serves as the metaphysical basis for the quadruple phenomena of authority that is justifying or explaining this phenomena as a whole. And its eternal structure, a division of 1 plus 3, and its mutual relation of its four constituted elements. Right? So let's repeat this. Thus, the causal structure of the historic world, which derives from its temporal structure, serves as the metaphysical basis for this quadruple phenomena of authority, justifying or explaining this phenomena as a whole, right? And its internal structure, a division of 1 plus 3, and its mutual relation of the four constitutive elements. In this manner, the metaphysical analysis justifies the phenomenological analysis in the sense that it explains why there are necessary four irreducible types of authority, and only four. It proves that our list of 64 variants is truly exhaustive. It also allows us to control and rectify the analytic description of each pure type and of each variant, and that the links that connect them to, and that of the links that connect them to one another. Consequently, it allows us to complete and justify the political, moral, and psychological consequences that can be deduced from phenomenological analysis of the phenomena of the authority, right? So therefore, it allows us to complete and therefore justify the political, moral, and psychological consequences, right? That can be deduced from this phenomenological analysis of the phenomena of authority. In order to do this, we should have pursued the metaphysical analysis more deeply, right? In order to do this, to justify these things more completely, we'd have to do it more deeply, completing it in depth, completing it with an in-depth ontological analysis. It is, however, out of the question to undertake this kind of work here. Right? We just can't do it here. we have to content ourselves with the brief outline proposed earlier and with a few remarks on ontology that is the follow. So, in other words, an extensive analysis, metaphysical analysis. This is, in other words, in order to do this, to justify the political, moral, and philosophical consequences, we would need to do what? A much more detailed, pursue a metaphysical analysis more deeply, completing it with an in-depth ontological analysis, more in-depth. Now, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a few remarks here on it. We didn't. This is out of the question undertaking this kind of small work. We have to content ourselves with the brief outline proposed. We just did here, and with a few remarks on ontological things. Now let's get ontological. Number 3, and it is brief remarks. The metaphysical analysis, time dash causes, time clauses. The metaphysical analysis, time and causes, right? On the question of time, past, present, and causality, right? Has only been outlined. As for the ontological analysis, we shall have to postpone it completely into latter. We shall content ourselves with making a few brief historical observation relative to this problem. So he's not even going to give an ontological account in that sense. It's going to be only kind of a historical thing. The ontological analysis has to reveal the very structure of being, taken as being, a structure that corresponds to the quadruple phenomena of authority, which manifests on the level of human existence, the metaphysical existences, the metaphysical existences of eternity and time in their 3 fundamental modes, as well as their relation in the guise of causes. Okay, so that of eternity, temporal past, temporal present, temporal future, formal, final, material, and efficient, right? Those are the 3 things in the connection with these 3 things. And as well as their realization in the guise of the causes. We have to say, however, that none of the 4 theories of authority implies a deep and accurate ontological analysis. So none of our 3 theories of authority that we have, that of the father, that of the judge, that of the master, that of that of the father, that of the master, that of the judge, and that of the leader, right? Again, this is scholastic, father, master, Hegel, judge, Plato, and leader, Aristotle, right? Leader, Aristotle. But precisely because each of these theories was conceived as a universal theory, recognizing only one type of authority and mistaking it of authority itself, their ontological analysis could only be incomplete and erroneous, right? Remember that each one of those theories, each one claimed that one aspect was the whole point of authority, right? And because it's precise, and therefore it can be only complete and erroneous. More precisely, it is the inaccuracies of the ontologies of the author of these theories that led them to undertake incomplete phenomenological analysis, not seeing in the complex phenomena of authority anything other than the aspect which correspond to their unilateral conception of being, right? Scholastic speculation over God, causa sui, the original, the ultimate, the first cause, and essences that imply existence. Trinitarian structure, incarnation, is in reality an ontological theory. But we can say that this theory reveals only one aspect of being, precisely taking this for the whole and distorting it by doing so. As for the problem of authority, scholastic ontology can provide material only for the ontological analysis of the authority of the Father. Similar remarks apply for the other three ontologies: Plato's ontology, the one agathon, or the one of the multiple, the dualist structure of being, and so on, could be starting point for the ontological analysis of the authority of the judge. Aristotle's ontology, by contrast, the immovable mover, the nous, the form and matter, and so on, leads to the authority of the leader. Finally, Hegel's ontology, negativity, totality, the dialectical structure of being, and so on, can only serve as the ontology analysis for the authority of the master. All of these ontologies would have to be modified, completely revived, precisely because they describe only particular aspects of being. They reveal the particular aspects of being. They reveal as if it were integral being, as it were integral being itself that was at issue. In other words, let's repeat. All these ontologies would have to be modified precisely because they describe the particular aspects of being they reveal, as if integral being itself was at issue. So that, in other words, that each one of them, and they're giving a particular aspect of being, a particular aspect of being that they think is the whole of being and is not the whole of being. Therefore, the whole of being would have to be all these three combined together, revised in a sense. All four combined together. Thus, the ontological analysis of the complete, that is to say, quadruple phenomena of authority, can allow us to elaborate a complete ontology and no longer a fragmentary one. One, as was the case with all those that have been proposed so far. Of course, we can study the structure of being qua being, stating that from the analysis of any phenomenon, since every phenomenon manifests being that exists qua world. But the phenomenon of authority being so complex, it is better to study ontology by taking other starting points and proceeding from there to the ontological analysis of authority, after having elaborated the broad outlines of ontology. So again, is it given that authority is so complex, right? It is better to study the ontology by taking the other starting points and proceeding from there to the ontological analysis of authority, after having elaborated the broad outlines of ontology, right? However, each different phenomena seems to manifest certain types of being better than others. Also, a phenomena that as important as that of authority must not be neglected in ontological studies. In fact, the work must be carried out in a perpetual to and fro descent from an ontology, assumed to be defective to the phenomena, then the ascent from phenomena, assumed to be defective, towards being qua being. This is the only way we can hope to arrive one day at phenomenology's metaphysics and ontology. That is to say, a philosophy that is truly, in other words, a philosophy that is truly definitive. In other words, true in an absolute sense. So therefore, a true philosophy right now is, in other words, assumed to be definitive. Methodology, not definitive. I said defective. Why did I say defective? Sorry, I apologize. In fact, the work must be carried out in a perpetual to and fro descent from the ontology, assumed to be definitive, not defective, definitive to my eyes, okay, to the phenomena, then ascent from phenomenology, assumed to be definitive towards being qua being. So, in other words, definitive ontology first to a phenomena, descent from the ontology to the phenomena, and then an ascent from a phenomenology towards being itself, towards being qua being. This is the only way we can hope to arrive at phenomenology's metaphysics and ontologies, that is to say, a philosophy that is truly definitive, in other words, true in an absolute manner. contenting ourselves with indicating this program of ontological work. This is indicating. This is an indication only. This is a brief indication. Let us now move to the deductions that can be made, starting from our brief phenomenological analysis and from our outline of a metaphysical analysis. Right? That's the notes. So this is how he ends it right here. This is where he ends. It ends on this idea, content. In other words, in fact, it's very structured. What he's saying here that we're going to have a very brief thing. We have to go back to this paragraph, right? We can only study the structures being qua being, starting from the analysis of any phenomenon, right? Since every phenomenon manifests a being that exists in the world, right? But the phenomenon of authority is so complex. So therefore, what do we have to do? We have to, because it's so complex, we just can't start with phenomena, metaphysics, and then ontology. We have to start first with, it's better to study the ontology by taking other starting points, right? Proceeding there from ontology to the ontological analysis of authority after having elaborated the broadest outlines of an ontology, right? So first, make the outlines of ontology. However, each different phenomena seems to manifest certain aspects of being better than others. So each phenomena will have that set of being, right? So therefore, also the phenomena is as important as that of a phenomena as important as that of authority must not be neglected in ontological studies, right? So therefore, that's the whole point. So, in fact, the work must be carried out in a perpetual back and forth, to and fro descent. So a descent from ontology to phenomena, an ontology that is first assumed as definitive to phenomena, and an ascent from this. So therefore, from phenomenology to assume towards being qua being. So therefore, and actually I made a mistake. It is metaphysics in the middle. Metaphysics in the middle. So phenomenology, metaphysics, ontology. So from ontology, metaphysics, phenomenology, ascending, phenomenology, metaphysics, ontology. This is how it has to go. And only by doing that, one day arrive at phenomenologies, metaphysics, and ontologies. That is to say, philosophy. Philosophy is the whole thing of these three things. This is what philosophy is. Philosophy is phenomenologies, metaphysics, and ontologies. That is truly definitive in an absolute. That is truly definitive. In other words, true in an absolute manner. True in the absolute manner. This is how he ends this analysis right here. So now I'm going to end it. Now we're going to go into the next stage, which is going to be the deductions. We have offered, he's given his analytical, this is his analysis. First, we did phenomenological, and today we dealt with the metaphysical and ontological. And he gives a brief account of the metaphysical and a very, very brief thing that he says he's not going to be able to fully do here. But he gives kind of an overall structure, how this is to be done, how it can be done. Okay, so let's stop here. That's good. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them below. And when I see them, I will respond to them. If you liked it, like it, share it with friends, share it on social media, spread the word. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If we're not liked, if you didn't like it, you can always say no, thumb down it, but say why in the comments, and maybe we can, if there is, maybe we can understand why you didn't like it. Maybe we can fix it, right? Another thing is you can follow me if you're interested in following me on social media. My links are below. And if you want to help me contribute to what I'm doing here, we had a disaster. I mean, like I said, this past Friday, I was supposed to do something. I was supposed to post something Friday. I slept all the day. I'm sorry, I slept all day. That's my. I'm gonna do a little video why I was missing Friday. I slept all day. I was so exhausted from the past week, and no one was here this week, so I was like, ugh. That's it. Um, so you can help me. Um, sorry, my brain has to get back in line. Um, you can help me, financially. With if you want to help me do this, continue doing this, make my life a little easier and help. Subscribe to our Patreon. It's very small money, it's not much in those things, but monthly, like $5 a month. I don't have any big plans like that. Okay, people say, why don't you do something more? But no, no. Mhm. Pardon. Yeah. Allergies. Um, so you can do subscribe to our Patreon. Or another way you can help me is buy one of my books listed below. These are posted. These videos on Kojeve, or any little ones, are Tuesday, Thursdays, Mondays, and Wednesdays. We're posting usually my big thing about Montesquieu now. Um, and Fridays is usually, if not, will some post either a live stream or a thing. But I have to go. Sometimes if there's something bad happen, like this week, last week, well, this year being seen, this is going to be seen like after the screw up happened. So, but that's it. Okay, that's it. Well, take care. Well, bye bye and have a good day. Take care.